Guys, today we're going to be going over the podcast from last week that Mercules was a part of. He is now the associate weapon designer for Destiny. He's also the guy that we get a lot of information about in regards to like time to kill values and everything else. We've used this Excel spreadsheets in the past many times. With that being said though, this is a complete comprehensive breakdown of that entire podcast, starting with Airborne Effectiveness. Guys, this is now going to be a stat that will show up in game amongst other hidden stats that will be showing up in game. Now, mentioned from Mercules, this actually started way before he even started working at Bungie. He joined in March, and this is actually a really big change and required the collaboration between many teams. I'm actually interested in it because for years now, giving weapon reviews required us to like run to third-party websites to find these hidden stats to then draw comparisons. Now you'll be able to do it all in game, which is amazing. Now, the discussion of high impact auto rifles also got brought up, and essentially the stability bump they're getting. These are our 360 round per minute autos, all of them getting a bump from 15 to 25 to now 25, 35. Granted, this is still lower than most auto rifle subfamilies, but understand guys, 360s, because of their slow rate of fire, they don't need that extremely high stability. Whereas something like a rapid fire auto rifle, you need more stability there, right? Now, the auto rifles that he mentioned was things like Here at Sea, False Promises, Age of Bond, Chrysura Mellow, Come to Pass. By the way, Come to Pass, such a good auto rifle. All of these though are getting stability bumps. Lightweight bows were also brought up, most notably inside of PvP. And of course, the unforgiving draw time that they have. Personally, I do like precision bows more in that sense, but it was brought up that the first arrow will be more forgiving and it can hold longer. They also increase the draw speed so you can get the second arrow off much faster. And essentially, lightweight bows will be designed to be more of a close range bow versus the precision bows that are longer range. Granted, we had the TWAB last week that gave more information on this. Regardless though, lightweight bows should be feeling really good for both PvP and for PvE. Now, Mercules also brought up that he doesn't work on glaives, and they mainly only have one dev who main's working on and developing all the glaives and glaive mechanics. And essentially, the new changes that allow exotic armor melee mechanics to pair with glaives is the first step for glaives and exotic armor, and there is more to come. Guys, we're actually going to be making a glaive breakdown video going into next week. I know we kind of like read through it in the TWAB, but the fact that we're going to have exotic perks synergizing with glaives is such a huge deal. I dreamed of a day when this would work with the likes of our swords. Can you imagine Crown Spitter working with the likes of Synthoceps? Now, granted, we had that video in the past. Remember the Black Armory sword, when you would use it with no ammo, it would actually work with biotic enhancements. And we did some crazy damage. However, this goes way beyond anything like that. And of course, that was a bug back then. It was never meant to be. Either way, Glaive video coming soon. Now, Dares of Eternity was also brought up in terms of the weapon perk pool changes. Now, the iconic perk combinations will be staying. Most notably, things like blunt execution rounds, that'll still be there. But the reprise will drop 3 or 4 perks in each column and add more popular perks, or of course, perks that weren't even out back when Dares launched. Now, they will not be removing iconic perk combinations during any perk reprisal in the future. That's good though. You definitely don't want to lose out on those perks that literally give identity to those weapons. Now, Mercules personally worked on the Lord of Wolf changes, and he stated that it's very hard to rein in because it acts more like a super high power pulse rifle versus a shotgun. And that is true. It does act like a pulse rifle, like literally a vigilance wing, but close range. Now, only part 1 of the changes are making into the launch of season 18 because of the timetable they were on. So part 1 is basically just a PvP nerf. Part 2, releasing after the mid-season or season 19 of the changes, include changing Lord of Wolves to a pulse rifle, with the Release the Wolves perk basically turning it into an auto rifle with full auto, and an actually bonus to provide a significant increase to crit damage. The plan is to also just buff its Release the Wolves damage as well. The fantasy is to use the regular version of Lord of Wolves to kill ads, red bars, then to use Release the Wolves when you want to pump large amounts of damage into a target. Granted, he did state that this is just the plan, so things might still change over time, but regardless, guys, Lord of Wolves is going from a shotgun to a pulse rifle to an auto rifle. That's kind of wild. Now, Dead Man's Tale and its cranial spike buffs were also brought up in regards to numbers. 4 points of aim assist will be granted per stack, and 8 points of range per stack. Now, that range bump, that's significant because they want us to lean into the hip fire more with the DMT changes. I know a lot of people would still prefer damage, but granted, you will get that at 5 stacks. They also increase reload speed per stack by 3%. Now, despite what a lot of people say, I actually think DMT is going to be better next season. And considering that its identity is to hip fire with it, kind of like last word, right? That's what I want to do more with DMT. So whatever needs to happen to grant that power fantasy, I'm all for it. Now, moving on, shotgun spread got brought up, and essentially there is a plan to remove as much randomness from shotgun spread as possible possible, and they don't want shotgun spread to be random. They want them to be fixed, and they're currently playtesting this feature to make sure it's feasible without breaking things. And there's a lot of like technical stuff that was brought up in this discussion. Listen, shotguns do shotgun things. Now, Stow speed of bows was also nerfed because at a high level, the Stow swap combo was functionally instant. You could be hit with the bow and then hit with a hand cannon and be killed instantly before your bow damage could even register because the swapping speed was so fast. Now, it was brought up that you could still utilize this playstyle. It's just going to require you to build into it more. Now, the full auto weapon setting. This is targeted for season 19. This will be the first iteration of this. Future more granular and fine-tuned iterations are already in the works. But this iteration will essentially be an option in the settings that you can switch on that will turn on full auto for all weapons. And it's strictly an accessibility change, and that's it. I remember a month ago we brought that up, that eventually it was going to be an accessibility change, and there were so many people in the comment section was like, Cross, it's a mod. Why would it ever be an accessibility thing? It's because Bungie has literally said it was going to be a feature. Did it take them a year? Yes. I have never waited this long to blow my load, but it's going to be worth it. Now, an amazing quote that was brought up by Mercules that everyone should hear. Quotes, as much as people think we don't playtest, we do. The weapons team playtests. I spend at least an hour and 30 minutes to 4 hours at most each workday just playing the game, just playtesting. Bungie has like over 1,000 employees, and if every one of us spent 4 hours a day just playtesting, the time we spent doing that would be immediately shattered within 15 minutes of a global season launch. 15 minutes of a season launch would shatter the time we spent playtesting over an entire year. And that is true. There's just so many more people that log on and play the game at once versus what Bungie has there in studio. Personally, I love it when things are broken. Like, that's the best. I will come out of a dead sleep just to see our artifact mods or whatever else working in a funky way with a certain weapon type, aka energy accelerant, crown spitter. It was the best. Or when Telesta was killing in 3 bolts or less. That was beautiful. Now, Glaive Hit Registration in PvP was also brought up, and it has been worked on for a while. They believe they fixed it, and the change for that will be coming soon, but no official date yet. I'm telling you guys, Glaives inside of PvP as well, man. They're going to be meta. They're probably going to be slightly infuriating. Believe me. Now, some clarification on the whole folding spec mods into the base perks. This actually got brought up, and it means that some of the spec mods will be going away, and the bonuses they provided will just be added to the base perks. So spec mods like Rampage, Surrounded, Dragonfly were the only ones named by Mercules. This is a good thing because let's be real, as much as we wanted to use Rampage longer with say something like Rampage spec, many of us would not forego minor, major, or whatever other spec mod that actually increased damage. Surrounded, the same exact thing. Dragonfly, everyone wanted bigger explosions, but come on. This change will be coming though either mid-season 18 or season 19. Very, very good change. I like it. And I actually think this should lead to more data ban within the weapon themselves by deprecating some of these mods. And I do like it that they're actually folding it into the benefits of the perk itself, which is good. Now, there was also a huge discussion about airborne effectiveness, accuracy, aim assist, lots of number, techie stuff, and lots of math. And then they went into the debate of mouse and keyboard versus controller. I will link a timestamp to this, guys, if you're interested in knowing a little more about this. Personally, mouse and keyboard versus controller, I love it. It's one of my favorite topics because everyone is wrong. At the same time, everyone is also right. When I bring up this topic on stream, I'm not actually trying to find an answer. I just want to fan the flames. I want to see the passion, and nothing gets the community more passionate, especially in PvP, than input devices, right? How many times have you been killed and said, damn you, controller? At the same time, how many times have you seen a guy whip around and immediately dome you, and you said, damn, those mouse and keyboard players, they should all go to hell? To me, that's what makes that topic so beautiful. Personally, I play with both, but I don't really mention controller because we don't have a controller sponsorship yet. Something about us shit-talking controllers doesn't mesh with their product. I don't know. Regardless, we'll link that in the timestamp if you're interested in that discussion. Moving on, season 19, we'll have more mods and other features to help build into airborne effectiveness. And they're going to take another look into air assault, as they don't think it's good enough or used enough, which it's not. I've tried. My main thing is, of course, airborne effectiveness is getting better. It is. Even the change this past season, it is a little better. Not perfect, but better. Terrible before. Moving on, there are no plans to buff or nerf any hand cannon subfamilies. They're actually happy where hand cannons are, meaning where 180s are, which they did get a buff this past season. Feel free to check out our 180 round per minute hand cannon breakdown. Even the smallest little buff will allow these things to 3-tap. And where everything else sits, 120s, 140s, they seem to be pleased about, which I am too. Moving on, the team is also looking at Divinity, most notably the fact that it feels needed to have in high-level content and raids. I wouldn't say it's needed, it just does help. I mean, it literally makes a precision crit multiplier the size of your mama for everyone to hit. I'm sorry, I don't mean that. Your mother's lovely. But really, though, know. That's its benefit, right? It expands that crit area and it gives a debuff. So one or two ways they're going to go with Divinity. Either A, they're going to nerf how much of a debuff Divinity grants. I don't really know how much you can actually nerf it. It already doesn't stack with other debuffs. Or they make it where it only grants a debuff, but no huge crit area for you to actually land precision shots. Both of which sounds bad. It's a raid weapon, man. So like to me, Divinity is not like Anarchy level of needed. Like Anarchy was the most dominant weapon for in-game PvE for like the longest time. We do all kinds of stuff without Divinity and we still run through Nightfalls very, very easily. So to me, it's not that level of potency. Now there's also going to be some changes coming down the pipeline that make snipers better options in PvE. Anytime you see anything in regards to sniper rifles and PvE, just know we're getting closer and closer to that whisper meta. Also, Gjallarhorn was brought up. There are no plans to nerf Gjallarhorn. This is good. This is very good. Also, no plans to buff Queenbreaker's bow or even move it to special ammo. Still gonna be shite. Honestly, guys, I don't think you want Queenbreaker's bow as a special weapon, especially inside of PvP. If you think Lawrence Driver and Arbalest are annoying, Queenbreaker's bow takes that to a whole nother level. It would be one of the most busted special weapons inside of Crucible. If anything, they just need to buff the damage inside of PvE. Now, they do plan to add more 3.0 verbs to exotic weapons. So Scorch, Overshield, Suppress. It's just gonna require a lot of testing and balancing. And even this past season, we noticed we didn't get that many weapons that actually apply Scorch. But I think this is gonna be something, even as time goes on, especially in the final season of this year, there will probably be a wave of exotics that will synergize with those verbs. Now, they have an eye on Riskrunner in anticipation of Arc 3.0, so beware, a nerf might end up happening depending on how it performs next season. This is actually interesting because we just did like an Arc 3.0 weapon video, or essentially weapons to get for Arc 3.0. Riskrunner was definitely on that list because of its chaining capabilities. Guys, I think right out the gate, Riskrunner is going to be busted, which is fine because when was the last time you were like, yo, I need Riskrunner outside of like Fallen Saber? So Bungie, let it be busted. Now, the team also brought up that they know that kinetic weapons feel less powerful and feel like they are falling behind, especially with the addition of 3.0 verbs. And they're currently looking into other ways to separate them from energy weapons, but they can't talk about it yet though. This is actually going to be interesting because I actually think all of our weapons will be converted at some point, like to either stasis or corruption. Like I think corruption, which is supposedly going to be the new subclass, right? I think we're going to have solar, void, arc in our energy slots, stasis, corruption, and whatever the other subclass is going to be in our kinetic slots. So I think at some point we'll probably see like a movement of what we have currently that deals kinetic damage to those energy types. Granted, that seems a hell of a lot more work than just having a flat out kinetic weapon. And by default, kinetic weapons do more damage than energy weapons. It's just all the different 3.0 subclasses and the synergy they have with similar energy types that allows them to be so potent. Now, Bungie's philosophy has changed in regards to nerfs over the years. And the general consensus is that previous Sandbox teams would let things get super powerful and then completely nerf them into the ground. Rinse and repeat. But the current philosophy is smaller, more numerous changes, which makes the Sandbox feel more static. But the team also feels that this way, your favorite gun doesn't get absolutely killed by a nerf out of nowhere. And that is true. You can definitely tell, like in the past, like way back, Bungie used to let things just get way too potent. I mean, let's be real. Viking Funeral Firebolt grenades back in D1 were super busted. And then they got nerfed into oblivion and no one ever used them. I like this more because it seems like Sandbox-wise, Bungie is trying to reach a state of balance. And even though true balance may be impossible, it still needs to be your main core philosophy as the Sandbox team. And I really think that's what's happening now. Now, a constant common misconception is that range provides more aim assist. It does not do that. You just get the same amount of aim assist, but at a longer range. Granted, it's still the same feeling. It still feels like your weapon is stickier, but no increase in aim assist. Now, they're also looking at high impact pulses and of course, no time to explain. And they do think they are performing out of band and that their ease of use is too high. Yeah, no time to explain is really, really good. I'm not really sure how it is on console. I know on PC, people use no time to explain, but it's not like the most used weapon. I'm curious to know though, if on console, no time to explain is the meta over there. Let me know in the comments below if that's the case. Now, weapon models pre-Shadowkeep are much harder to reuse and work with. It's almost easier to completely rebuild models than to make models from before Shadowkeep. And that's actually interesting because there is a slew of weapons from before Shadowkeep. We're talking Black Armory, the Forsaken weapons. Now, it's curious that they brought this up because we have the return of Allstringer and other opulent weapons, so it can be done, but obviously it must be more difficult. Now, the question was asked, when will Monte Carlo get a buff so that its bayonet acts as a glaive? Mercules replied, no comment, but also stated, you can't see it, but I'm winking right now. Fellas, it's coming. Monte Carlo will eventually be able to stab and poke people, which we've all been asking for. Now, the weapon teams works to 2 seasons in advance. So for example, season 19 is basically done and worked on. Season 20 has already been going on for quite some time. But almost all other teams like Narrative, etc., are way more ahead. Like they start working on seasons months and months before the weapons team even gets to them. So just kind of give you an idea of the timetables and turnarounds here. Hence why Sandbox is able to speed up at certain points. Like this past season, we had like that half season Sandbox launch. It's because of them working on things in advance that allows them to do so. Now the new perk refresh and origin traits are being worked on for older raid and dungeon weapons. Personally, I don't like regrinding loot, but if you give me a good origin trait, I would do so. The other side of things is we need open matchmaking for everything. Like everything. Bungie, it's 2022. The player base is older, more mature, and just overall better. Open matchmaking up, open communication up, and you'll see lots of content being filled by a ton of solo players. Now they're also investigating being able to allow for selectable perks in the columns of craftable weapons instead of just one perk per column, but it's very difficult to implement. Much more difficult than they anticipated, so no plans yet, but they are trying. And this is going back to like deprecating certain mods. There's only so much bandwidth within a single weapon that is allowed, at least that's my understanding. Hence why we don't have as many selectable perks in a given weapon. But we've been seeing it more and more, especially with those core playlist weapons with a number of perks on them. I think it's gonna happen. It needs to happen. Most of the roles that we craft have to either be a PvP role or PvE role. And to go back and forth between either of those is a very expensive task. So either A, allow for the crafting table to fully unlock a perk when you purchase it, thus allowing us to switch back and forth whenever we need to, or B, allow for us to have more perks on a given weapon. I have no idea which one of these is harder. The fact that they're working on the weapons themselves versus whatever's craftable and having permanent unlocks, it seems like you want to go in this direction. Now, War Mod cells and Charged with Light stuff have been pretty nerfed. Elemental Whales are pretty much the main mechanic now. And it was stated that War Mod cells have had their time and they're probably never going to be meta again. But changes are coming to all of these systems in Lightfall. And it is kind of crazy, right? Because like War Mod cells were so powerful. They were like the go-to mod choices. And we had lots of crazy builds. I remember our Tyrant Surge build with Liar's Handshake, super nutty. And then of course, Charged with Light was like the go-to mod choice for survivability with things like Protective Light. Day 1 raids especially, you had to have it. And of course, now we're working with Elemental Wells, which are super potent. I'm curious to see whatever this change to these systems are in Lightfall. That change alone is huge, whatever that is. That sounds like overhaul talk. So guys, that is your breakdown of that podcast. We will link it down below. Big shout out to Mercules for providing a lot of this information. Of course, the podcast itself, as well as my editing crew for doing their due diligence and us gathering this information. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.